Welcome to part 4 of Nutnfancy's review of the excellent Sig P226 as I go line by line, unflinchingly down the list, comparing it against its nemesis, the Glock 17. These are both 9mm versions of the pistols. And we're in this area right here, the ergonomics and simplicity of the two guns. I left off in part 3, or whatever it was. It's kind of all blurring at this point, especially after my retakes. But I left off talking about accidental discharges with the SIG system, i.e. law enforcement officers, both male and female, and civilians who have not adhered to proper training procedures and have left their gun in a single action configuration like this, and while not on target or pointing in an unsafe direction, they've done this, put their finger in the trigger guard, then they've done this. And sometimes, by the way, that's involuntary. I don't know if you know that, but in a stressful situation, it's sometimes normal that the hand just clenches up as you're stressed. And if you're a police officer holding a perp down like this, single action, you're getting ready to kill somebody. This is not the way you stay on a perp. You lower the hammer and you do it like that, or if it's in double action and you think you might have to shoot quickly, this is how I would be. Double action, my fingers in the trigger, ready to rock and roll if I need to, but there's no way I'm going to leave the hammer back like that while I'm pointing at a perpetrator. You're going to kill someone accidentally doing that. So if you're a SIG user, or if you have a gun similar to a SIG, i.e. it's a traditional double action first shot, transitioning to a single action shoot, then you better adhere to those same training procedures. And for you newbies, what I'm talking about, double action first shot means it's a long revolver-like trigger pull. See that long trigger motion? And it actually actuates that hammer back until the sear pops. By the way, from the previous segment, it's still a snap cap in there, pointed in a safe direction. This is a safe gun. Nutnfancy is always safe. Enough said. So, back to the actuation of the trigger. Here's the first double action pull. It's long and heavier. That's good. We want that because in a stressful situation, we don't want a hair trigger because we may cook a round off when we do not want to cook a round off. So that's why a lot of law enforcement agencies go with double action only. By the way, I hate that. I hate double action only triggers like SIG used to make. I don't even know if they still do a DAO only SIG. It's just ridiculous. In other words, every shot is heavy double action like that. I do not like that. I like the traditional double action first shot, transition single action, because it gives me the best of both worlds. It gives me that long, heavy trigger, you know, which is good for stressful situations like I'm saying. And then if I have to make an accurate shot, might be a headshot at 25 yards, might be a hostage situation, and guess what? Time is of the essence, and the only gun you have is this, or someone's going to die. Yeah, the SIG would be the one I'd want because I have that single action trigger pull. And once again, newbies, as we go double action, that slide comes back, it strips off a round from the magazine, inserts it into the chamber, and the hammer remains in the cocked position, just like that. Now we're in single action configuration with a much lighter trigger pull to release the sear on the SIG pistol. For accuracy, this is excellent if you train with it, because that takes a whole different skill set to manipulate that trigger to get a nice, smooth release and to hit your target. So there's two different skill sets. Actually, the hardest one is the double action, to stay on target while you're pulling that long and heavier double action, which, by the way, on the SIG pistols is about as good as it gets out of the box. It's a very smooth, albeit heavy, trigger pull. It's nice and crisp, but there's a lot of wiggling, micro wiggling I'll call it, going on as we do that, and the slide's shaking back and forth. And you may not think, looking at this video, that makes a hill of beans of difference, but I'm here to tell you it makes a world of difference at range. Specifically, if I'm shooting at more than 15 yards, you're going to end up with like the target I showed you before. If you're lucky, you'll hit. Those micro wiggles were going to send your rounds completely off target. A pistol, by its very function, is hard to shoot. It's hard to shoot good with a pistol. It's because we don't have anything to rest it on, and we use the most unstable of all platforms, our hands and our arms, which have all kinds of issues, you know. It's hard to shoot a pistol good, especially at 25 yards, 20 yards, tough. And especially double action, whether it's a Sig double action or any double action, it's hard to shoot. And that's why, again, I hate double action only. What if I had to make an accurate shot at 20 yards? What if some bad guy has, you know, a loved one or a friend and I have to make the shot? It may happen. I want single action. And guess what? I'll train with that too, to make that shot. You should too. And yeah, it takes training. It takes a mental preparation. It takes training. I'll give you an example of that training. That was a security police officer in the Air Force back at Fairchild Air Force Base. He didn't use a Sig, he used an M9 Beretta. There was a gunman at the hospital shooting people with an AK-style assault weapon. Hate to use that word. Let's just say an AK gun with a high-capacity drum magazine, killing all kinds of people. The guy was a bike police officer. He biked to the scene with his M9. How you doing? That's all he had with him is a Beretta, not the Sig, but the Beretta M9, his service pistol. And he saw this guy at that point out in the parking lot sending rounds into innocent bystanders. So this young security police officer, Air Force variety, drew his service gun. It was the only thing he had. And at the range of, I believe, around 70 yards, took him a couple shots, but he shot the guy right in the head. He ended that tragedy with, how you doing, another gun. That's what I'm talking about. Now, can we make that shot? I don't know. Heaven forbid we ever have to. Seriously. We don't want to have to do that. That's horrible. But when people's lives are at stake and innocent people are dying, police officers, you know what I'm talking about. You're going to have to someday step up and be the hero. I'll talk more about that in future videos. Back to the trigger on the Sig. Double action, smooth. Yeah, it's a longer action take-up. Single action is nice and crisp, light release. Bam, you can get some good accuracy out of it. But you've got to train with that. Like I showed you in my desert tactical clinic, if I haven't had trigger time on the Sig for a long time, I'm not so good at it. It takes me a little bit of shooting, sending some rounds down, or at least some dry firing. You don't actually have to send rounds down range. You can dry fire the Sig, and you will be amazed at how much difference that makes. Again, I put my snap cap in. I'm in a safe direction. But that dry firing will immensely help you. And while you're doing that, you just check your sight picture and just try to keep that sight picture nice and stable as you go through the cycle of dry firing. If you see it wiggle like you see me wiggling it now, you suck. Okay? A good trigger pull will be one where that, and it's hard for me to see because I'm looking through the viewfinder, but that you keep that sight picture nice and stable right up to sear release. That's the dry fire training I'm talking about. And you can do that with a Sig, you can do that with the Glock in the background, and it'll help you immensely. So, we're talking about simplicity. The trigger on the Glock, on the Sig, is a little bit different, and it is more complex than this Glock trigger. The Glock trigger, again, that's empty. Now it's cocked, no round in the chamber. That Glock trigger is very consistent. It's the same thing every time. As are all striker fired pistols. A lot of guys like that. Then again, a lot of guys like the Sig with the second strike capability. In other words, if I do have a bad primer on my round, I can pull the trigger and give it a second or third hit. Like I've said in my previous videos, I generally don't dick around with doing that. If I have a bad round in the chamber, bam, 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 click, nothing happens. It's time for a tap, rack. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to pop my snap cap out. Rack to slide back, and then observe the bad guy and see if you want to crank another round. A lot of people call that the tap, rack, bang. If you have a fail to fire, that's something you should practice. By the way, and here we go again, integrating philosophy in the reviews, but that's what makes it interesting and educational. When you're at the range, notice when someone has a jam of some sort. Everybody does the same thing. What they do is they take their pistol What should they, first off, let me back up. What should they do? If you have a failure to feed or a failure to fire while you're practicing with your pistol, I don't care what it is or where you're at, you should perform a tap, rack, bang maneuver without question, because that's important training for you. So bam, 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 click, nothing happens. Tap, rack the slide, bang. The only caveat I would say to that is if you have a squib load. In other words, a round that has no gunpowder in it. If you hear something that sounds unusual, like you'll, then I would stop. I would not send another round down that barrel, because you might have a bullet wedged right in the middle of your barrel due to no gunpowder in the charge, especially if you're hand loader. You're getting ready to blow your gun up if you fire another round behind it. So that is the only caveat. Other than that, when we have a failure, we shouldn't stand around looking incredulously, what in the heck just happened? We should use that opportunity to do a clearance drill and fix the problem. Little philosophy there. You know I like to integrate it. Let's press on. We're talking about simplicity and ergonomics. So the Sig is, honestly speaking, a more complex pistol in terms of operation. We have a dedicated slide release lever. We have differences in the trigger. How about takedown? Well, let's take the Sig down. I've shown you the Glock already. I don't know if I took that down, but I spoke to it. The Sig is very easy to take down as well. And to do that, we're going to remove the magazine, point it in a safe direction. You always see me, by the way, oftentimes when I rack the slide, like I'm here on the table, I will fan that trigger back just so it's easier for me to bring the slide back, and then I'll drop it again. That's just my technique, and I've trained with it. So that's that. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that snap cap out, and I'm going to catch it when I do it. There it is. Rack. Clear. Sure enough. Now, I'm pretty anal with my guns because guns are an investment. In other words, you may have to turn it sometimes and sell it. Same with knives. That's not to say there won't come a time when I won't use it hard. In my law enforcement job, in my military job, of course, oftentimes those are not my guns, so it doesn't matter because they're U.S. government's guns or whatever. But with your own guns and your friends' guns, it behooves you to take care of them and to preserve their value. And this is just a little anal trick for the Sig, is I'll put a little drop of CLP on the takedown lever. By the way, this is the takedown lever. Rub it on the slide, and that way I don't get markings on that slide. And again, that's a stupid thing, I know that. But this is a very expensive gun. We'll talk about that. And the more you can take care of it, if you have to turn it, maybe times go bad in your house and you need that money, the nicer this gun looks, the more money it's going to bring you. They're investments. In fact, very few things in life keep their value like a gun. Now to take it down, I just rotate that takedown lever, and now you can see why I lubricated that frame so it doesn't mar up as much. Then I slowly release the slide, comes right off. It really doesn't get much more simple than that. And of course, I can take the recoil spring out and the barrel out if I need to as well. And usually when I do that, by the way, I'll put a drop of CLP on here, just in case. And yeah, that's kind of what I like. I know there's some great lubes out there like TW25. That's also outstanding. Either way. So let's put it back together. Just as easy as pie. We just slide that slide back on. I'm looking through the viewfinder, not being able to see what I'm doing. Rotate the slide release back. Lower the hammer. Voila, done. Wipe off our lubricant off the frame. That's that. I'm going to call it a draw. Takedown is easy as pie in the Sig. It's easy as pie in the Glock. I see no differences in it. They're just outstanding, both of them. So, let's see what else. We talked about ease of use, simplicity. Now we're going on to accessories between these two excellent designs. And oh, there's one thing I need to talk about, though, and that is, well, this will go in with accessories. One of the things I love about today's modern semi-automatic handguns is that you can put lights on them, because the dust cover, this portion here being the dust cover, can take and accept lights, kind of like this M6 tactical illuminators, both a light and a laser. If we slide that on the Glock, bam, we've got illumination and additional targeting capabilities. But I'm out of time. Here comes a part 5. Are you kidding me? Nutnfancy.